All right, this should be fairly quick. I am going to go into an issue that's kind of been bothering me for a couple of days. So, I am a person who likes to believe that they can follow people who, are more knowledgeable of certain things than themselves. And one of the common repeated lines that I've seen is that 40, or rather 97% of the world scientists agree that human activity influences the environment. So, um, the environment worsens based off of what people do during it. Yeah, Dirk, how you doing? I was planning on doing something longer, but I'm in the middle of another incident. But look, I sat here and I kind of just subscribed to the idea that okay, these people are all saying this. Um, I can completely concur with it because I used to think it was very simple to see this. You see a person, let's say, smoking. They pollute the air with their cigarette, for example. I'm not saying smoking is immoral, but I'm saying that you can look at that and go, okay, yeah, that's definitely a person doing something to screw up the environment, even if it's in a small way. Um, so when I sat here and I looked at the reaction to the Paris Agreement, for example, which is what Trump pulled out of last year, and the U.S. became one of only three countries to pull out of it in the entire world. It was the U.S., Nicaragua, and I think Saudi Arabia, somewhere else. But again, out of all of the countries, we were one of only three to get out of it. And I looked at that and I said to myself, why is the media not talking about that? Why is no one pointing out the fact that all of the world's countries, except for us and two other ones, are saying no, we don't believe in that particular issue. The media and just no one covered it. But I thought more about the mentality of Trump, and I've kind of tried to look through some of his remarks. And I remember his UN ambassador Haley, the former South Carolina governor. She stated that he believes the climate is changing. So, well, that's a nice little thing for her to claim, but I don't see it reflected all that much in what he's actually doing in office. You don't pull out of a agreement having to do with the environment between all of the different countries and then claim, oh yes, I take this very seriously. Yes, 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 yes. So wait a second. So if he's doing that, something does not mix. There's a discrepancy here. Um, and when I spoke to some of his supporters on places like Twitter, these different social media places, I realized that this is kind of the same issue I've had with a lot of people that are fans of his and kind of fans of Democrats too. Just generally these people who are not really they're actual voters, but even if they actively follow this stuff, they're not trying to go and learn about certain things. The kind of the casual observer of the stuff. I realize this is not something that they're on board with, but they just kind of let it happen as sort of a, whatever. I thought to myself, you have 12 years to, as stated by scientists, to change the course of the climate, to actually make it better so that we don't all, permanently, irreparably get screwed. And they just don't care. They still will vote for these climate change deniers. And I try to always put myself in the position of them. And they sometimes will bring up somebody, like, yeah, 2030. That they said if you don't do things, but and Republicans are going to stay in the White House for at least another year. So we basically already only have a decade to do this. But the point I'm trying to make is that you have these people who will say, oh, look at what Al Gore predicted, it didn't come true. Yeah, but the point is, when you make those predictions, they're based off of a scenario that is proven or done or has some kind of validity to it. So, for example, if you say, oh my God, melting ice caps, the world's getting warmer, which is, we've actually, these last couple of years, been the warmest in the entire history of the earth. But you can look at that and say, well, this is going to continue to get worse if we don't do something about it. A rational, reasonable person would say, hey, if these last couple of years have been the warmest, we have to do something or else it's going to just keep getting warmer and warmer and warmer. We're going to turn the US into Mars, basically. And my computer's actually getting a little warm. But they basically said, we don't care if this happens because we're so on board with all this other stuff. And I thought to myself, if someone's a true supporter of a politician and they think that this person is on the wrong side of the issue, or not even a supporter, just someone that is wary, is realizing, hey, I'm stuck with this person because all the people in my state or country decided to vote for them and they won. The world burned. Well, Envoy, some people reject things all the way up until it happens. Um, I'll never forget going on this one forum and having and seeing this person call a deceased politician a loser, and then thinking to myself, wait a second, this politician has uh you know he's got a building named after him. He's been in movies, or rather his character was portrayed in multiple films. He's on money. What else do you have to do to be considered a winner in this person's book, especially when you know that they're never going to, by virtue of them choosing to not do anything spectacular or actually special, um, ever achieve the same amount of status. So it's that kind of bizarro world thinking that is, permeating of this situation. But when I spoke to the users who were talking about this stuff, they bring up Al Gore and they bring up his predictions, how they didn't pan out. I said, well, you do realize that Trump. It's kind of like with Ted Kennedy. So during the Kavanaugh thing, there was someone who brought up Chappaquiddick, like in while speaking to me, and I was like, what does that have to do with anything? I had nothing to do with that because, you bringing that up isn't supposed to shut me up since I didn't actually, just it doesn't. It's out of nowhere. It comes to left field. Whataboutism. But I said to them, well, you love Trump so much, you do realize that he donated to Ted Kennedy, right? So just like how they try to smear Gore as being stupid or dumb or whatever, it's like you do realize that Gore was one of the politicians he met before he took office. So between winning the election and actually being sworn in office, that was one of the ones he met. I think it was him and Ivanka that both met with him, and it was this big deal because you have this climate change denier conspiracy theorist meeting with the main guy pushing that idea. But yeah, they just then started trying to pretend as if all of this stuff before was radically insane. That the person that the president that they backed now suddenly has had no idea what he was talking about, or if he did, we have no reason to listen to him, even if the person that we've anointed to this position of authority, as someone that we take seriously, Trump, is meeting with him and acknowledging that he's an official as it relates to this particular policy. And I said to myself, what will it take for people to stop voting for individuals who don't take the climate seriously? I don't, and I know why they do it. It's the same reason why Joe Manchin does it. They get money from the coal industry to pretend and act stupid and actually perpetuate the idea. Think of how insane this sounds. 97% of the world's scientists got together to trick us into thinking that the environment is going to change. It's like when we put out the Paris Agreement and Trump said this is a bad deal for the US. Who is stupid enough to think that all of the world's countries, except for two of them, got together and said, we're going to get the US? He really wanted you to believe that. Drill that oil, baby, drill it. I don't know who you're talking to, Envoy. Must be some young lady over there. Dirk says, and my nihilistic side comes out as I read that climate change will affect the ocean no matter what. Yeah, I don't get what it's going to take for these people to, because my theory is that they're not that big on denying that it's going to happen. Kind of like how when that Texas Senate race was going on, there was a Cruz supporter who said, another climate change denier, who said, yes, money in politics and corruption is very bad. I'm still going to support Trump and Cruz, even though Pelosi, Schumer, all of the people who are actually in positions of power are corrupt. So it's like you're trying to appeal to both. It's kind of like when Trump was on the campaign trail and he would say Iraq wasted all these lives and sound non-interventionist. Then he would say we're going to bomb the what out of ISIS or whatever group or whatever country. So they talking out of both sides of their mouth. but I asked myself, what is causing them to seem so uncharismatic toward this topic? At first, I figured, oh, they just don't, they don't believe it's a serious thing. But now I've started to come to the conclusion that maybe they just they don't care, and they're not going to care until something ends up happening. As far as you start seeing ice caps melting outside of your house. And some people, like a person who's in, let's say, their 80s or whatever, will be able to avoid this. But the future generations are getting screwed over by having a bunch of rabid idiots that pretend as if all the world scientists are trying to promote the Democrats. What will happen to the ocean can no longer be reversed. They won't care. The money blinds them. Yeah. And they also know that they're not going to be around for it. So they do what they think is right to get a couple of dollars, and in the end, we all pay the price. If you remember that line, Envoy, with the women, they do what they think is right, and in the end, we all pay the price. I think it's a true saying that you sit here and you fully understand the seriousness of this topic, and then the people around you is like, no, it's not true, it's not true, it's not true, and then Trump in the Paris Agreement, oh yeah, we're not doing that one. So you just end up getting screwed because the person in a position of leadership uh, basically is saying, yeah, we're not here to bother with this. I explained that in the why romance is a scam. I'm basically finished with them as far as actually going out and being the initiator. If someone tries to talk to me, I'll talk back to them. If they don't, hey, go to hell. So I hope that answers your question, Load. Or would you rather have the three? Would you rather me say your phone username or just Load? Depends on what you want to be called. Dirk says head of EPA is a joke. Oh yeah, Wheeler is a fool, man. If you watched the hearing with him and Bernie, that was just idiotic. Well, I believe that climate change is serious. Oh, my mistake. He wouldn't even say climate change. And that's the head of the EPA at a time when Twilight Zone. At a time when you have the experts saying you have 12 years to finish, to be able to reverse this process for the most part. 12 years, a decade, and like a fifth of a decade, and you won't even still say it. It's an amazing thing to see. Just that person who is so purposefully ignorant, this Cole Baron, so we know why he's acting stupid, is able to just gaslight you and still probably be confirmed by the Senate now that they have two more Republicans. Oh, you're Envoy, you like my quotes? I need to find out what his dad's name was. I forgot. Somebody can Google it. Every time I get on, completely dehumanized. Yeah, man. Well, I said it before that the whole purpose of any of these apps is to get the most people on them, and then after you're on there, whatever happens, they can't be held responsible for. So if you waste your time talking to 30, 40, 50 of them, hey, you're just screwed. Pretty much any one of those websites where people put up a thing going, hi, I'm looking for somebody to talk to, and then they start putting up the list of demands that's longer than, I don't know if it was you, Envoy, that said it, longer than the Declaration of Independence. So that's their wish. Lessen the known destruction. He doesn't even acknowledge what is being said to him. Yeah, Wheeler is, but again, Dirk, there's a difference between somebody like Wheeler and someone like who is really ridiculously like. So, for example, I don't know if Trump himself is getting anything from the coal industry, although I wouldn't be surprised. But I could just think it's just him being surrounded by a bunch of people who tell him, "Oh no, don't worry about this, don't bother with it." And you can infer that those people came after he entered the White House, because why would he meet with Gore if he didn't take it seriously? Was that trolling? Did he go up to him and go, yeah, tell me about climate change. Tell me, tell me, tell me. And then he goes up and then he's like, got you. And does nothing about it. Oh, I thought it was demands. I didn't know you whether you use commandments, whichever one. Let me see what else. If I missed anything. Yeah, the ocean is over. That's gone. You can go outside. You can look at it. You can take a if you even want to a lick of it, but it's finished. It's over. It said something different now. Oh, that was your alternate phrase, like the alternate facts of Kellyanne. I guarantee you, if people actually did like a climate march, which they have done in the past, and just like surrounded the White House and all these other executive, like the governor's mansions in each of their respective states, you would have the spokesman for those particular governors, and also, Trump, Kellyanne Conway or whoever else, try to tell you it's not that big a deal. It's kind of like how we have a boom bust cycle with the economy, which is why people like me and secular talk are saying it's going to collapse within the next coming year, or at some point in the next 2 years. And you had Trump's economic advisor Kudlow come out and go, "There's no recession coming," and they always say that. And I guess the thing that gets me is that when I see people on places like Twitter or YouTube or any of these other websites trying to talk up how great things are doing right now, I tell them, do you not remember the period of 2007, 2006 when it was treading down and people kept telling you, it's just a little small thing. Don't worry, don't worry, don't. It's going to happen. Same thing with climate change. We have all of these experts come out and go, yeah, this is going to happen. Yeah, this is going to happen. You really think they're all trying to trick you? It is, it's incredible. Not sure the administration cared to see it. Oh yeah, Dirk, they're not interested in that. They just go, whatever. Oh, you guys are marching to help the environment and make sure our planet doesn't turn into a little fireball. Oh, that's so cute. Load says the sad thing about climate change is that when we really start seeing the very noticeable effects, by then it will be too late. And what's even more disturbing, Load rather, I caught myself really quickly. I'm sorry for that mispronunciation. Is that people who are going to get affected by it are the children and grandchildren in some instances of people who are not going to be around and thus couldn't care less if it happens or not. And that's what's so infuriating, that you as a person who's coming up, um, are going to inherit a earth that is made horrible by your forefathers who had the technology to see it and just decided to stick their fingers in their ears and not even bother with it. Also, a lot of people in poor countries who have very little part in accelerating climate change. Yeah, again, the people at the top do what they think is right, and in the end, we all pay the price. I'm trying to see if Envoy remembers that line and what that's from, or whether what the other instance of me using that, because it's very synonymous with the scenario. You have people who recognize this, but they're not in positions of power. Um, and it just feels like every time you get someone who says, "Yeah, this is a problem," when they try to negotiate or otherwise interact with, just like I have no interest in helping, or rather, let me put it like this: for as many problems as I've had with Trump on some social issues, when I supported him in getting out of Syria, that wasn't because I wanted him to stay in there so he could lose the election and I could go around saying, "Oh, he's in the wars, in the wars." It was because that was a policy that I supported, and my only regret was that it wasn't done sooner. So if he came out and started actually doing things in favor of the environment, which isn't going to happen because he's surrounded by, morons like Pence and the rest of the circus in the White House, I wouldn't be upset. I certainly would not be mad because, again, we don't have time to sit here and pretend as if that's not going on. But they act as if we do because they know they won't have to deal with it. Okay, let me see if you guys have said anything else. So you're running into a lose-lose situation with them. Nothing else. I'm trying to answer any inquiries. Is serious that trying to play team sport over it's honestly disgusting. Well, this is kind of a recurring theme with these election cycles. So, for example, over 90% of Americans support universal background checks. And you go, okay, well, that means that we're going to get some basic form of gun control. But NRA gives Trump 30 million, so he sits on his behind, and the rest of the Republicans kind of sit around. And even if you thought that gun control won't work, I think most people would agree you can still arm, you know, you can beef up security at public venues like schools, libraries, but they still won't do it. And it's not because they don't have the money to pay those people or to do any of that. They're, I did the story about the 717 billion military budget. So it's more them just not caring. And it's really sad because even people who think there shouldn't be any gun control agree with the idea of the good guy saves the people from the bad guy with the gun. Thus, we should beef up security at these public venues. They agree to that for the most part, and it's just this thing where anytime you seek compromise with regular people because they're not bought out, they can actually make a sensible position. But because the politicians do not care and they know it's never going to happen to them, most likely, they just completely ignore you. They tune you out. So that's another example of that kind of way of thinking. Just like with the environment, McCain and Obama, when in 2008, both ran as pro climate change candidates. As much problems as I had with them on a wide spectrum of things, that was an area that they knew should not be left up to. Are you going to vote for the Democrat and get climate change? You're going to vote for the Republican and say screw climate change. They knew it. They were smart enough to figure it out. Can't be trusted half the time. Yeah. Well, Envoy, we see through them, but the problem is that when people are left with two options, a lot of times they get so disgusted of having the same choices over and over, and they just don't vote. That's why half the country sits at home during elections. So yeah, I made a mistake when I talked about the stupidity of voters or whatever, or at least the stupidity of Americans, even if they don't know. Like there was a poll that said, oh, more than half of Americans can't even name a single Supreme Court justice. Even if they don't, if that is true, and I don't doubt that it isn't, or I would love a poll on like how many, if they could name a fourth of the presidents, like all the one between FDR and now. I love what Operation Viking is writing, but let me continue. Even if they decide to, not know about this stuff or don't know about, the specifics of these things, they can still see through the scams. So, not the real, nothing to be ashamed of. Okay, Operation Viking says, look at France. They raised the gas tax on the working poor. You got yellow vest protests. We need that over here. You can't just make simple solutions for climate change. Well, yeah, I would suggest, Viking, that one of the, austerity over there is just destroying that country. And the protesters are bringing it back. They are a hell of a group. And they're really what's so disturbing is over here, they're still cracking down on free speech. Look at the Israeli boycott bill. Regardless of whether you think the Israeli government is bad or horrible, whatever, we're talking about a bill that says, oh, you want to boycott this country because of what they're doing or for whatever reason. Okay, fine, but we're going to boycott you in return. That's against freedom of speech, and it's being perpetuated by government officials. So it's ridiculous. The two-party system is perfect for creating a nation of apathetic citizens. Yeah, a bunch of people that just don't care. That's why I like Britain so much. They have three parties. And also, I told you I love question time. They ask the prime minister, and they get to boo and yell and shout. Did any of you see what was it, the no confidence vote, the stream for the video for that? I love how the speaker, when Corbyn is talking, he's like, yeah, 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 yeah. He just doesn't care. When one of the Conservative Party members was talk, I want to just do that exact expression from now on. Yeah, load, but I meant the part where the speaker, when Corbyn is talking, someone in the Conservative Party says something that you can barely hear, and then the speaker looks over to their side and he's like, yeah, 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 and he has his mouth open. Like he's just so apathetic. Oh my god. You know what? I'm gonna see if I can download that and put it up on that. It's that funny. It was beautiful. That's my favorite. That's probably my favorite politician from Britain because every time he says something, it's so comical. Dirk says in France the government is scared of the people. In the U.S. the people are scared of the government. Well, yeah, but here's the thing. I don't know what else they can take away from us. They've already destroyed our environment. They've already taken away our Fourth Amendment, rights with the Patriot Act. They already send our soldiers overseas to die in pointless, never-ending wars, which is why they freaked out when Trump pulled out of Syria. They've already given us wages that we can't even use to afford to live comfortably here. I really don't know what other ways they can screw us up. That's why when I hear people talk about just like let's pretend that that Israeli bill goes into effect and you can't boycott Israel anymore. Okay, all the other stuff was bad to begin with. So what are we losing? You know, it obviously hurts business owners, but actually impacting us in some way that just changes the whole thing. It's over. They already bought out our all of our news with the Telecommunications Act, which I'm sure some of you guys probably haven't heard of, by Clinton. They already gave the banks a bailout and allowed them to do whatever they want with the repealing Glass-Steagall. I literally don't know what other ways they can screw us over. It's like we're literally at the bottom of the barrel. And I'm not saying that to be funny, negative, any of the different words or terms that could be, used or considered. I genuinely think this is as low as it gets. We're talking about having an environment where our water dries up. Um, it's so hot as hell outside that no one can barely walk, and this is coming. And there are people who, to this day, I look at them and I talk to them, actual supporters of Republicans, and they're not dumb. They're not like in the sense that they don't believe that the environment is not being screwed over right now. But they really sit there and they go, pros and cons. I think the environment is down here when compared to whatever thing that Trump says that they like. They also set up massive that we can do little to yeah, that's what I'm saying, Lo, that literally everything is screwed. And people keep trying to tell me, oh man, it could get worse. How? I would love to see. Well, not love because um, there's so much stuff the U.S. government does that people don't even know about. Like when people sometimes go, well, why do you support not torturing, people in like places like Guantanamo Bay? And I say to them, it's because if you actually look at the methods that are used there, because when you say torture, it can mean anything. But to define the methods that are used, are you aware that they would put headphones on the people they were torturing and make them so loud that it just basically broke their ears? Like people don't whatever, they don't pay attention to stuff. It won't matter if we put aside our differences and unite. Yeah. But look, people are not apathetic to things until it affects them. That's why there is a solid 20. No, I think there's another one, Envoy, where they they did some kind of anal penetration. I'm actually not making that up. That's something else that was done. And then Gina Haspel, your CIA director, she was able to get that top job after destroying the tapes of all the evil stuff that our government was doing to people that, for all they knew were innocent. So it's all the more disgusting. There was some kind of anal thing they did to the people, and I have to go and look it back up. But I don't want to repeat something that I'm not sure about. But I know the music thing happened. The way the media paraded that just because she was a woman was so well. Yeah, but that's kind of how this feminist society works. You see, I have no problem with having a woman in any position of power, provided she does things that make sense as it relates to the environment. If we get someone that's serious about climate change, that pushes back against this idea that it doesn't matter what we do, I have no problem with them being in there, whatever they have in between their legs. But if you're a warmonger that wants to stay in multiple countries and keep up the U.S. austerity that has resulted in a literally 4/5 of its civilians living paycheck to paycheck, I don't care if you have a penis or a vagina. It doesn't matter to me. It's I told you guys before I was opposed to Kavanaugh for ideological reasons, and I only started to kind of edge toward believing Blasey Ford when when Feinstein asked him if he wanted to do an investigation. And he said, I've already been through 6 investigations, even though those were done before they knew about these charges, so they wouldn't know to look for it. But I'm going to tell you this, just to show you how screwed up this society is in favor of women. If I were a man, or rather, if I were a person who was in their 40s, 50s, and I came out and said, this woman who's running for president groped me 30 years ago, nobody would believe me. And, there are stories of men getting touched. So it's not, entirely, it's not like it never happens. Okay, Load says, yeah, and they also love to accuse someone of being, if we oppose something a woman does on ideological grounds. Like, yeah. Well, that's why when they see someone like me, supporting Sanders over Harris or Warren or any of the other ones, they tell you that you're sexist. And I said, I think there's a difference between Warren and Harris. Uh, Harris was my attorney general for 8 years, or 7 rather, and I didn't like her record. I didn't like that she wouldn't prosecute any bankers. I didn't like that, only now is she starting to talk about climate change. Just that kind of stuff is unappealing to me. Not because it's because they're real. They try to turn these people, and that's kind of what I was talking about with the relationship stuff. I saw women who, again, they're normal people, make mistakes like you and I, get lionized as these figures who are the all-knowing beings of right and wrong to such an extent that anyone who had a problem or trouble with them suddenly is less than human, is not worth the time of those around them. And it was insane to me. So, and that they all had the hive mind, if you remember that. Just to comment on the real, what you wrote rather. Load says there was a bank that was illegally foreclosing on homes, and oh yeah, well we're gonna do a whole video on her. Don't worry, that's coming up. It's gonna be edited. It's going to contain all of her misgivings. So yeah, climate change is a big deal. People are not paying attention to it. The ones that do, there's too few of us. It's similar to pretty much any other issue that is a big thing. And some people literally will not care enough until the ground beneath them, the water beneath them swells up, and they find themselves, screwed in 30 to 40 years. Well, my theory is they demonize men because it's easier to control feminized men who is docile, lead revolutions. They don't want that. I think more in the future, which is why they to break them emotionally. Yeah, man, it's literally like, I said this before. I truly believe I would have seen a completely different scenario if I were a woman in this. In the way society is now, it would have been a complete reversal. If I'd gone on here with some breast and said, "Oh, I had trouble with men," all of these people would be giving me support. Oh, they don't know what they're missing, but because you don't have a vagina, time to be hung or crucified. So it is what it is. Is there a way to do a podcast or simulcast one day to talk about similar issues? What do you mean by that? Are you saying you want to have like a show where you call in and say something, or what? I just want to clarify. Yeah, Lo, that's literally Envoy remembers this quote: "It's a feminist world, and you ain't in it." Our feminist society, rather, and you're not in it. And then the corporate gangbang, where the coal companies are literally able to get people to just say, screw what the world looks like in 30 years. Focus on getting your paycheck today. Perhaps we can set aside and talk about and live stream. I do that, I would think, every weekend, usually. Although, I do prefer this kind of format, kind of like how Load came in or asked the thing about the women, then came back and spoke about the actual topic at hand. I have no problem doing it to where you get the thing that's in the title, switch over to this, go back to things in the title, switch to that. Because, people want to discuss certain things. I just don't like it when that one thing starts derailing the conversation so much that you can't even get back to what you intended to speak about. It's problematic. So, Perhaps did anyone else write anything else? Or is that everything everyone's going to say? I'm getting ready to close this out. But yeah, there is a serious problem with the American electorate, and I brought up the idea of having people um, not be able to vote unless they had certain knowledge about history and the just certain political events, because I think when you have an informed public, and I'll freely admit that I believe the internet's been very helpful to me in this example, when you have people who know about things in the past, how other countries work, I think they're more susceptible to question what is being portrayed in front of them. And in this digital era, it's become much easier to look that stuff up. Now, people don't always use the internet for the right purposes, but it can be a very helpful tool. I think most people would agree with that, maybe. Load says, I think even the apathetic voters will have to start getting on their, yeah. Oh, yeah, man. Once they start seeing those C's just disappear, it will be a different era. We can't afford to be apathetic any longer. Well, that's low. That's that ties back to the female thing. If people who've never experienced this are not going to get what you're saying. I have all kind of people who ask me, "Are you part of this group, that group?" I said, "No, but I empathize with what they're going through. I don't agree with rhetoric where they say, all violence needs to be inflicted on this group or any of that other extremist stuff, but just the idea of I try to interact with this group and they hurt me over and over and over again. I understand, and I'm not going to shame them for being human." So I just think that's a difference between how things are said. Yeah, Darryl, it's hard to be sympathetic to those who have not been toward you. So I'm getting what you're saying. It's kind of like how I try to, with for example, with some of the people that I am affiliated with on YouTube, I go and watch their stuff occasionally. Might leave a comment. I do a lot more watching than commenting because I don't like comment sections all that much anymore. But I generally check their stuff out, and some of them don't even know I've seen it because I like to do onto others as I have myself, or as they have done to me, rather. So that's that. Just to close this out, I think you're, and again, not to bootlick for the Democrats, but they've generally had a better record on climate change than the Republicans. The EPA directors during the different Democrats and even early Republicans like Nixon, the founder. I can't get mad at them. And that's just to say that this is a particular issue where I see one side being a little wee bit more serious than the other one. So that's something to think about, I believe. I've removed my romance goggles a long time ago. Yeah, throw those away, Envoy. Sell them to someone who still believes in that. Thank you, Load. I appreciate that. Envoy says, which means I'm not harsh and I will genuinely be there who needs it, but only if. Yeah, well, that is the point, Envoy. That you need that. God, all this stuff connects. What I'm saying here is not an indictment on either party. It is look at candidates and where they stand on climate change, and then see if that person supports. Don't assume that because someone has an R by their name, they don't care. Even though we've seen a lot of them not show that much interest, but don't still look into what they like. And same thing with the women's stuff. If there's a woman who assists you and you have you believe has a genuine interest in who you are and is not trying to get something out of you other than spending time with you as a human being and valuing you as a person like you would onto someone that you actually care about, that's someone worth giving a damn about. Okay, Operation Viking says, I think many people think that the government is not a suitable route for fighting they power about for a possible tax. Yeah, I get that. One more thing is, anyone here have any strong religious views? I identify as Catholic, although I'm kind of a disgruntled member of that religion. I think that people need to stop believing that if you go to church and if you read the Bible, automatically you're going to heaven. I've seen a lot of people who identify as Christian that I think are hypocritical. But we can get into that on a separate date, So thank you for watching. Have a good night.